All right, good afternoon. We'll go ahead and call to order the regular meeting for the City of Murfreesboro Board of Zoning Appeals for November 19, 2015. First item on our agenda is the consideration of minutes for from our regular meeting on October 28, 2015. Those minutes are included with our agenda materials. Any changes to those minutes? No. All right, if not, then they'll stand approved as presented. And we'll begin considering some new business. First, variance requests. First application there is Z15075 by Scott Williams of W. Scott Williams and Associates. He's requesting a variance from the ordinance prohibiting parking spaces or access aisles for parking spaces serving multifamily dwellings located in multifamily residential districts from being located within their required front yard. And this is for property located at 1745 Cason Lane. All right, Mr. Anthony, if you'd review that application for us, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon. Excuse me. The applicant wishes to construct an apartment complex at 1745 New Salem Highway, which is located near the intersection of New Salem and Cason Lane. The property is zoned RM16. The minimum front yard setback for multifamily dwellings in the RM16 zone is 30 feet. Because the property has frontage on both New Salem Highway and Cason Lane, front yard setbacks apply along both street frontages. The zoning ordinance requires that parking spaces or access aisles for parking spaces of multifamily dwellings located in multifamily zoning districts, including RM16, not be located within the required front yard. As shown on the applicant's exhibits, a portion of a driveway and a parking area are situated between the apartment building identified as Building 5 and Cason Lane. The encroachment is 20 feet into the 30-foot setback, leaving 10 feet unimpeded. The applicant seeks a variance to allow the 20-foot encroachment. The applicant's case is largely dependent upon the shape of the lot. The applicant contends that the lot is quite narrow on its northern side, which, as you can see on the zoning map on the screen, it does indeed taper off on the north. In order to make the project fit onto the site and to adhere to the minimum building setbacks, the applicant had to arrange the buildings as depicted on the site layout in your packets. This arrangement necessitated the location of the drive aisle and parking area in the front setback along Cason Lane. Having a drive aisle on the western side of the property is important both for connectivity as well as for parking. Without this variance, the applicant would likely have to reconfigure the layout to get the required number of parking spaces and the required internal connectivity. The applicant is in attendance and can answer any questions that you have, as can staff. Thank you.
All right, Mr. Anthony. Any questions for Mr. Anthony? Donald, would you be able to maybe pull up a site plan and show us the area that you're talking about? That's
yes, sir.
Affected?
So on the screen right now, I have the complete site plan for the site. This is Cason Lane running along the western side. This drive aisle is the one that we're discussing. And again, the zoning ordinance says no drive aisle in a required front setback in a multifamily zone. So this is within the required 30-foot setback. I believe that the setback is notated with this dotted line. And as you can see, that drive aisle crosses over into that required 30 feet, as does the corner of one parking space right here. So the variance request is to allow this drive aisle, to allow this minor encroachment here. They're crossing over about 20 feet. It's leaving about 10 feet unimpeded in this area.
Is there any buffer planned for that area that we're aware of?
There would not be, at least on this side.
And the fact that there's two front setbacks, I guess, since it's oriented to Cason Lane, that would be the one I guess that front setback would always be there. What's the side? But I guess I'm asking that and then saying I don't know that it would apply. But
okay, so you're asking what is the side setback for that zone?
Yeah, just out of curiosity for that northern end. Although, if that connector road, I don't see what it is on the.
I have to refer to a footnote,
Well,
a footnote
may
that no
not- it
longer
may not matter.
exists.
It may not have any bearing since Casey Lane's going to be the front.
Okay.
Okay, so,
Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
so in looking at that site plan, then the purpose of this is just to include this little connector road between the two parking lots to provide, as you said, I guess, accessibility and maybe some flow. They obviously could still get to the parking lot, the one in the rear, from the entrance on the left side, and the parking lot in the front from the entrance on the right side. Is there any other connector between the front and the rear parking lots other than that little throat there that's in the setback?
Yeah, I really think that that's it.
Well, there actually, no, I'm sorry, there is one toward the right side of the property, it looks like. Is that a connector?
Are you talking about this entrance here? The entrance
Yeah,
and
you've got that entrance, and then I think there's a connector that's right behind that goes to the back parking lot.
Right there. Is that a drive-through
Yes,
between
yes.
those two buildings?
yes, that definitely appears to be a drive. Yes.
Okay. So the back parking lot can be accessed a couple different ways, from the left side or from the right side, without that throat.
It could. However, if someone were turning in on Cason Lane, it would require them, without this connection here, it would require them to go all along the perimeter of the property until they get here and then turn around and come back. So it definitely would hinder the connectivity in that way.
Why would they just go up to the next entrance off of Cason Lane?
Maybe that's a question for the applicant to answer.
All right. The next question then is, we've got another application right behind this one. I assume this is the same property concerning landscape buffer.
No, it's a different, same applicant but different property.
Gotcha. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Any other questions then for Mr. Anthony?
Well,
All right. Mr. Williams?
Yes,
sir.
Scott Williams. I wanted to comment on the question you just had, and that was we found during the site plan review, which we went through last month, and the approval process, that the local fire jurisdiction prefers us to have the ability to loop around these buildings, and we actually had to add a couple of loop roads for that same purpose to get around. I'm also fighting with the narrowness of the site. As you may have seen, I was limited on how many parking spaces I could get right in front of the building, which is obviously where I would prefer them to be so that we can have good access to that door that's up there on that end. And it's already minimizing the amount and making it longer, the amount of space or length that they're having to walk to get to it. So that one variance in my eyes was the only way I could really get around. Now, we did leave enough space up there in that 10 feet to be able to include some buffer in our landscape plan and show, be able to do that buffering in there. So, but I did try to minimize it, and in fact, I tried to get rid of all the parking. I've got one little corner there that I've got in it, but tried to just minimize it to drive aisle only.
Okay. So this little road then that's in the setback, that was something that was kind of required, I guess, by the fire department?
Yeah, that specific one was not, because I always showed it on there. However, on the other end of the site, we have 2 parking lots that dead-ended and 3 parking lots that actually dead-ended. And I was instructed that to get approval, we were going to have to go on and loop those roads. One of them I did. The next one I have to before I can get the final checkoff from the planning department.
Okay. All right. Any other questions for Mr. Williams?
So I think going back to Julie's question, what you're saying is you are willing to buffer between Cason Lane and this loop around road or drive or whatever you want to call it?
Yes.
Okay. And is the plan just to have it there, or is it, at what point will it end? I see, is it just for the variance area, or?
I think our landscape plan actually showed landscaping all the way down that whole property line.
Okay. Okay.
All right. All right. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
At this time, we'll go ahead and conduct a public hearing. Anyone present wishing to speak for or against the application, if you would, please come forward. If you would, state your name and your address for me, please.
Ursula Harrison, 2465 Foxcroft Road, Murfreesboro. Currently, the road we live on, Foxcroft, dead ends into this particular property. And I wonder, this may not be the time to ask this question, but I mean, I have a chance to ask it again. Is there anything in this plan that opens up that subdivision road into this complex?
It opens up Foxcroft Road into the complex.
It does?
No, that's your question, right?
That's the question, yes.
Okay. Mr. Anthony, maybe, or Ken, I'll have y'all review.
We may have, but
Okay.
I can't remember what happened yesterday, so I think Mr. Blomley or Mr. Anthony will need to answer that question.
I don't see any connectivity on that side.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes, sir. Look, is that Sawmill? There's Sawmill comes in on one side. Oh, I see.
Down here.
Yeah. Do we think we've definitively answered that question?
Yes. Let me get the site plan pulled back up one more time. So right now, all that we're looking at with the site plan is on the northern end of the property. The New Salem side is not yet is not included in this site plan, and the street that the gentleman was speaking of is a little bit further south than what this site plan encompasses.
Yeah, I see. All right. Yes, this apartment complex is tucked into the opposite corner of that property, Mr. Harrison. The other end of the property where his street, Foxcroft, comes into is not proposing to be developed, at least right now.
Not as part of this plan, right?
Okay. Our guest appearance by Mr. Blomler.
You know, it's a big
Cameo.
day, right?
Chairman Rogers, as you mentioned, Foxcroft is on the southern end of this tract. This particular project will include the connection of Sawmill Drive, which is at the very north end of the development. And that was stubbed into this property with the expectation that it would be extended onto Cason Lane. Foxcroft at this time, I believe, stubs into the property at the southern end. I think it's our expectation that when we see a site plan for the southern end of the property, that it would extend out at that time, as it is a stub street, with the expectation that it would extend in the future. But that is not a part of this particular plan.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. Blomley. Mr. Harrison, I don't know where you went, but did that answer your question? Okay. All right. Anyone else present wish to speak for or against this application? All right. Seeing none, we'll declare the public hearing closed and open the floor for further discussion or motion.
I'll make a motion that we approve with even though it's not on the site plan, with the notion that there's going to be the buffering between this area and Cason Lane.
No,
And
second.
Also subject to any staff comments.
Sorry.
All right. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Not all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, Mr. Williams, that application has been approved. We'll now consider your other application. It's Z15076. Again, by Mr. Scott Williams, requesting a variance from the zoning ordinance requiring a 12-foot type C landscape buffer between multifamily and single-family residential districts. And this is for property located along the south side of Joe B. Jackson Parkway, east of Shelbyville Highway, and west of Annell Drive. Mr. Anthony.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The applicant wishes to construct a multifamily development along Joe B. Jackson Parkway behind the Villas at Baskinwood subdivision. On the first page of the staff report, the area for the new development, which is up on the screen now, is the large orange area with the RM16 label here. As you can see on that map, there's also a small strip that's colored orange that connects the subject property to Joe B. Jackson Parkway. That's where the access will be. The area between Joe B. Jackson and the subject property is the villas at Baskinwood, which is here. It's a townhome development that's partially completed. The zoning ordinance requires that the applicant install a 12-foot or type C landscape buffer along the portions of the subject property that adjoin single-family residential zones and properties. A look at the site layout shows that the applicant should be able to meet the type C buffer requirement on all sides of the property, except along the strip of property that will connect this new development to Joe B. Jackson Parkway. In the applicant's request letter, the applicant notes that he wishes to preserve a tree line along the eastern side of the driveway. That would be along this side. Along this side?
All right.
Thank you. Doing so is going to push the driveway and the sidewalk to the western side of that strip. Unlike the other required buffers, the buffer along the western edge of the strip would not really serve a separation of land uses function. Rather, it would buffer the villas at Baskinwood from a driveway. The applicant is in attendance and can answer questions, as can staff. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Anthony. Any questions for Mr. Anthony? All right, Mr. Williams, anything you'd like to add to this application?
Mr. Anthony hit a nail on the head on that one. We, as part of the rezoning, they did want us to ensure that the existing tree line down the western side of that was intact. And so that was brought to my attention. Of course, because of that, I pushed the drive over. That drive will also be a joint access for the Baskinwood project. So with the dual usage there's already a drive lane going down through there. It just doesn't access Joe B. Jackson. So they'll think it's it'll look like it's part of that same development. Visually, it's not going to change a whole lot.
All right. Any questions for Mr. Williams? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
This time we'll conduct a public hearing. Anyone present wishing to speak for or against this application, if you would, please come forward. All right. Seeing none, we'll declare the public hearing closed. Open the floor for further discussion or motion.
Mr. Anthony, there's a picture in our packet that looks to be the tree line in question, but I wanted to confirm that that was the case.
It is, and unfortunately pictures had to be taken on a particularly rainy day. But yes, that tree line is visible behind, if you're looking at the picture with the power pole.
I am.
That's correct.
Okay. So that's what we're trying to preserve, correct?
Correct.
Yeah. Mr. Anthony, would you just quickly flip through those pictures? And
Absolutely.
show us
Absolutely.
the property that's affected.
So the first picture is an aerial photograph. And as the applicant mentioned on this one, you can actually see where the villas at Baskinwood, the street here that's marked in blue, that's going to tie into this new driveway. It will just become part of this new driveway as well. So the folks at the villas at Baskinwood will have access to Joe B. Jackson on the eastern side of their subdivision. So this is a shot of the villas at Baskinwood. This is from the location where the driveway would be located, just to give you some perspective there on how close this driveway is going to be to the townhomes that are developed.
And it appears, will there be additional townhomes built closer to that picture that are, or will that road just be?
I want to say that the townhomes along that are actually fronting Joe B. Jackson, that there is one more building to be constructed. On the aerial, they're certainly showing room for one more building, and if I remember right from the site visit, that part is not quite completed yet. This is the picture that captures the tree line that Mr. Halliburton was speaking of. So this picture was taken from Joe B. Jackson, just turned toward the development, and you can sort of see a little bit of the tree line there. And this is again from the same general area, but looking back, you can actually see back behind the villas of Baskinwood, and that's where this new development will be located.
All right. Any other questions? You ready for a motion?
No further questions. I'll make a motion to approve the variance request.
I'll second.
I have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Not all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, Mr. Williams, that application has been approved as well. Next, we'll move on to application Z15077 by Mr. Hal Clark of Civil Site Design Group, representing HRP Residential. He's requesting a variance from the zoning ordinance requiring a 12-foot Type C landscape buffer between multifamily and single-family residential districts. And this is for property located at 1673 New Salem Highway. Mr. Anthony.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The applicant wishes to construct a multifamily development at 1673 New Salem Highway. This property, which is accessed currently from Warrior Drive, is zoned RN16. Along the western edge of the property is the Stones River, which is zoned RS15, which is a single-family residential zoning. The zoning ordinance requires that the applicant install a 12-foot or Type C landscape buffer along the property line that adjoins the river. As shown in the aerial photos included in your packet, there is already a tree line between the subject property and the river. However, the existing tree line would not meet the specific requirements for the Type C buffer. The applicant wishes to obtain a variance that would, in effect, waive the requirement for the Type C buffer. The applicant argues that having a river adjacent to the subject property is in itself an unusual circumstance, and having the river zoned for single-family dwellings is perhaps more unusual. The applicant notes that the river cannot be developed into any use beyond what it already is, and therefore there is no need for what is essentially an incompatible use buffer. The applicant is in attendance and can answer any questions, as can staff.
All right, thank you, Mr. Anthony. Any questions for Mr. Anthony? Donald, is there a site plan that we can look at on this
Yes, sir.
as well?
I think the first one to look at is this color illustration that the applicant submitted that shows the buildings that would be along the riverbank. And sort of shows this existing tree line that is along the riverbank.
How far from the existing tree line would the buffer, what is the difference between what is current and what the required buffer is?
Yeah, so the required buffer would be a sort of solid 12-foot buffer, and there would have to be shrubbery, there would have to be additional plantings beyond what's there now. What's there now is just sort of what you would expect along a riverbank, which is sort of scattered trees. Many of them are very mature, older trees.
And how far from the property line would that come in? Is there a point on that map that is would extend that further toward the buildings, or is it just additional plantings in the greenery that is currently present?
I think it wouldn't be quite so much extending toward the buildings, although it most likely would. It would be increasing the density of the existing plantings in the area that they already are. I'm assuming that would push toward the buildings a little bit more, but I don't know that would be as significant as the increase in the density of the landscaping.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
On this color photo, I guess we've got an outline. I don't know, is that the proposed buffer? They're going to trim back what's there to fit in the drawing, I guess, and also where the buffer turns to the east, I guess, away from the river. I guess that'll have to go, that'll go away. And I guess what's left will be this outline?
Right.
Okay.
What is outlined there, the sort of clouded area, is labeled existing trees to remain.
Okay.
So that's existing tree canopy.
And does the Greenway Trail exist as we speak today, or no?
I would have to ask the applicant to answer that. I do not believe that it does.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As it stands today, the Greenway Trail does not exist along the river. As a part of this project, we'll be constructing that part of it.
And Mr. Anthony, like the application before, we're just talking about this specific part of the property. This is not a variance request for the entirety of the property that abuts residential single-family. True?
That's correct.
Okay. Just this little area back here by the river.
Correct.
Okay. You want to? We also have, looks like some pictures and other color area photographs. You want to
Absolutely.
Quickly.
So the first is an aerial photograph taken from the city's GIS system. And this shows the subject property. This area that I'm sort of hovering over at this point is the area of development. And this is the existing tree line that's going to separate that development from the river here. This is just a closer up view of that. You can see this was probably taken during spring or summer months, and you can see that the tree coverage is fairly dense along the river there. Rest of the picture is not so great. It was a rainy day. I couldn't traipse through the field very far, but this is taken from Warrior Drive. This is just taken out in the direction of where the river is located. This is evidence that I did indeed place a sign on the property as required by the Murfreesboro zoning ordinance.
Okay. Any other questions for me? All right, Mr. Clark, anything else you'd like to add to the application? Go. All right. Then at this time, we'll conduct a public hearing. Anyone present wishing to speak for or against this application, if you would, please come forward. Seeing none, we'll declare the public hearing closed. Open the floor for further discussion or motion.
If there's no further discussion, I'll make a motion to approve the application, subject to any staff comments.
A second.
All right, have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that application has been approved. And next we'll consider application Z15078 by Dr. E.C. Tolbert, representing the Rutherford County Historical Society. He's making a request for property in a duplex residential district located at 717 North Academy Street. Three parts of that application. First, he's requesting a special use permit to allow an institutional group assembly use, which would be a club in the district. Second, a variance from the zoning ordinance requiring that parking lots be surfaced with asphalt, concrete, or other hard surface dustless material. And third, a variance from the ordinance requiring a 5-foot perimeter planting yard along the front, side, and rear property lines of non-residential lots of 1 acre or less. All right, Mr. Anthony, if you'd review that one for us, please.
Thank you, sir. The Rutherford County Historical Society has been working on restoring the Ransom School, a historically significant building at 717 North Academy Street, for the last several years. In fact, a special use permit and variance for this property were obtained at the September 28, 2011 Board of Zoning Appeals meeting. The special use permit that was granted at that time allowed both a philanthropic institution and an institutional group assembly use to operate on the premises. At the time, the Historical Society planned to share the building with another nonprofit agency. The variance that was granted in 2011 allowed the institutional group assembly use to have a lot size of less than 3 times the minimum lot size permitted in the residential duplex zoning district. Today, the applicant is with us for 3 requests. The first request is for a new special use permit to allow an institutional group assembly use, or a club, in the RD district. With the Historical Society now being the sole tenant of the building, the special use permit for the philanthropic institution is no longer necessary. The applicant wishes to utilize the building to house publications and exhibits. The applicant anticipates giving tours of the building and has constructed a gate between the subject property and a neighboring property on North Spring Street to allow large vehicles such as buses to enter and exit the site safely and efficiently. If the special use permit is granted, staff asks that it be conditioned on obtaining an easement agreement with the neighboring property owner. The applicant's second request is for a variance from Section 26C7B of the zoning ordinance, which requires that parking lots be constructed of hard surface dustless material. As shown in the photos in your packets, the parking lot is currently covered with pea gravel, which does not qualify as hard surface dustless material. The applicant notes that the pea gravel is more in keeping with the historical context of the building. At present, staff has noted that some of the gravel has made its way to the street due to there being no curb or ramp, and staff has already begun working with the applicant on the specifications for such a curb and ramp. Staff recommends that approval be conditioned on the installation of curb and ramp constructed to city standards. The applicant's third request is for a variance from Section 27J1 of the zoning ordinance, which requires a perimeter planting yard of 5 feet around the property. The applicant provided a landscape plan, which is included in your packet. The landscape plan shows trees throughout the property. However, there is a note on the plan that implies that the applicant would install these plantings when funds become available. And there is, of course, no way or desire on our part to monitor this organization's funding. If the board's desire is to grant the variance for landscaping, staff recommends that you do so without any expectation or certainty of if or when the landscaping would be installed. If the board approves the special use permit, staff recommends the following conditions, just to summarize those I've already discussed. First, the applicant shall install curb and ramp consistent with City of Murfreesboro design specifications. The applicant's engineer may contact the city's engineering department for assistance in this matter. Second condition, the applicant shall execute an easement agreement with the owner of the property at 706 North Spring Street. The applicant may contact the Murfreesboro Planning Department for assistance as to the form of the agreement. And the third condition, the re-subdivision plat shall be submitted for review, combining the two properties into one property. This condition was placed on the previous approval and is still warranted. The applicant is here and can talk more about the goals of the project and how the variance requests can help achieve the goals, and staff can answer any questions that you may have as well.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Anthony. Any questions for Mr. Anthony? And I'm sorry, Donald, can you tell me one more time why we're having to redo the special use part of it?
So the special use permit that was granted before recognized two different entities sharing this building, and so there were two different special uses that were part of that permit. With one of those uses now having gone away, I think it would be cleaner for record keeping to get a new special use permit that just recognizes the one use that is currently being proposed, which is a club or an institutional group assembly use.
Okay. And I hate to say this, but has the Rutherford County Historical Society been operating in that building since 2011?
I would need to defer to the applicant.
Okay. Okay.
I believe that there's been a restoration effort underway for some years, so I would expect that they have to some extent.
Gotcha. Any other questions? All right, Dr. Tolbert, anything you'd like to add to the application, sir?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have been operating at this property since 2011 when the Arnott family gifted this to the Rutherford County Historical Society. C.B. Arnott had recovered the property, and the family ultimately gave it to us at no cost to us. For the sake of time, I've asked our expert authority, Dr. Van West of the Middle Tennessee Historic Preservation Department to come and speak to you briefly about what we're about in this effort.
All right. Dr. West.
Good afternoon. We worked with C.B. Arnett when he first sort of got interested in the property. Was this an important historic site and property? And yes, indeed it was. research clearly showed that. It's one of the oldest remaining properties in this part of town. And then also, was it restorable? And our judgment was, yes, it was, and we did some preliminary work before the Historical Society acquired the property to guide that restoration. Our feeling is, and this is speaking as the Center for Historic Preservation and also a resident of the Murfreesboro Historic Zoning downtown zone, I live at 125 North Highland Avenue, is that it's been a very solid restoration. It's turned a building that had been abandoned into an ornament for the neighborhood and the city. And we have continued to work with the Historical Society when they have questions about the history of the site or the preservation concerns, and we will continue to work with the Society on these issues over time. It's been a really a case where the Historical Society stepped up and really helped a historic building here in Murfreesboro.
All right. Thank you, sir. So has the Historical Society then been holding functions at this property since 2011, or has it just been under reconstruction?
Mr. Chairman, we have our board meetings at the building, and that's all. We're open 1/2 day a week on Saturday mornings from 9 to 12, and otherwise the building is not occupied. You have a packet that I gave you in the blue packet. If you can look at that briefly and see what we have done with the property. The first picture there is a picture of the Ransom sisters when the property was about 1910, and they were operating the school there.
Mr. Anthony, is there any way we can get these on the
I do not have
projected?
Those were bought before the meeting.
Okay.
You see the other buildings there, or the other pictures there, show where we started and where we have come to. And I think that's quite an impressive array there. We chose in this variance to have the parking, off-street parking with creek-like gravel, the pea gravel, which is a brown color that sort of looks very compatible with the building. The brick building is sort of a brownish red. We did not want concrete or blacktop, which is a more modern trend for the area. Also, we did not want a very commercialized appearance to the property in that of landscaping. We wanted trees like maple trees, yellowwood trees, dogwood, redbud, trees of the period of 1900 to 1930s, and that's what we intend to do with the landscape. And I think that you'll be pleased with it. The neighbors in the area, it's a deprived area, and we certainly have appreciated their interest in it and their support of it. They have been very appreciative of what we've done, and we have one ally next door that keeps a close eye on the building and certainly monitors what goes on there. And these are her words, she has told the element in the area, there are no computers, there's no money, there's nothing there but books and more books and books, and you don't want to go to jail for books.
All right, thank you, Dr. Colbert. At this time, we'll go ahead and conduct a public hearing. Anyone present wishing to speak for or against this application, if you would, please come forward. All right, seeing none, we'll declare the public hearing closed and open the floor for further discussions or motion. We do have 3 parts of this motion we got to consider and, I guess, vote on separately.
I'll make a motion for the first part to have a special use permit.
A second.
All right, motion and a second. I assume that's subject to staff comments. I believe there were some staff comments.
There are some staff conditions attached.
And I intend for my motion to include those.
All right. All right. Motion and a second. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Part 2, the variance requiring the parking lot be surfaced with something dustless.
I'll make a motion that we approve, subject to the staff comments, hopefully encompassing the pea gravel and then in keeping with what this facility is all about.
A second?
All right. Have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. Finally, the variance requiring the 5-foot variance from the ordinance requiring the 5-foot perimeter planting yard.
I'll make a motion to approve this variance with the conditions required and set by the staff.
I'll second.
All right. Have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right. Dr. Tolbert, that application has been approved. Great project, and I know certainly I want to extend my sincere appreciation, probably on behalf of the board as well, everything the Rutherford County Historical Society does to maintain that history and that property there. So thank you, and Dr. West, same to you too. All right. All right, now we'll consider some special use permit requests. Application Z15079 by Shannon Hightower requesting a special use permit in order to operate a seasonal fireworks retailer in a heavy industrial district located at 2015 and 2019 Northwest Broad Street. Mr. Anthony.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The applicant wishes to operate a fireworks retail tent on property in the heavy industrial district at 2015 and 2019 Northwest Broad Street. This is the property that, if you've driven down Broad near the corner of Thompson, is currently barricaded on the northwest corner of Northwest Broad and North Thompson. The applicant seeks a special use permit to utilize this site for fireworks sales from December 25th, 2015 to January 2nd, 2016. The zoning ordinance would allow the applicant to begin setting up the tent on December 20th and would require the site to be cleared by January 7th. The board granted Mr. Hightower a special use permit for this site for 4th of July sales earlier this year. However, the site was not utilized for sales at that time. The materials included in your packet indicate that the tent will measure 30 feet by 50 feet and will be placed on the lot closer to the intersection of Northwest Broad and North Thompson. That's the 2015 lot. The applicant will use that lot as well as the lot next door, the 2019 lot, for parking. If the board approves the application for a special use permit, staff recommends the following conditions. And please note that I borrowed language from previous reports for this staff report, and for clarity of language, I would like to change all of the shoulds to shalls that appear on your staff report. So the conditions are, number 1, certification shall be submitted that the tent is flame resistant or treated to be flame resistant. Condition 2, a fire extinguisher shall be kept on site at all times. 3, the city's fireworks ordinance shall be posted on site. 4, no fireworks shall be set off on site. 5, the site shall pass an electrical safety inspection prior to opening for business. An electrical permit shall be purchased from the Building and Codes Department in order to obtain this inspection. 6, the tent shall meet all minimum setback requirements for the HI zoning district, and a tent permit shall be obtained for the tent. 7, all grass and weeds growing through the existing gravel shall be removed and or killed, as no grass surfaces are allowed for the placement of the tent and for vehicular travel or parking. The site shall be kept clean and maintained from high weeds and grass. And 8, if striping is not clearly shown for parking, then the lot shall be striped accordingly. The applicant is in attendance and can answer any questions, as can staff. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Anthony. Now, was the should to shall, that was something Mr. Rucker, I bet, suggested, wasn't it?
Mr. Rucker, what do you think?
I think that would be an excellent idea.
See?
And we want to also
Isn't that great?
welcome Mr. Rucker to I don't know if we've ever had the pleasure of having you sit with us, but I understand you've drawn at least temporary assistant city attorney duties, so I want to welcome you to
Delighted to be here, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Rucker. All right. Any questions for Mr. Anthony? All right, Mr. Hightower, anything you would like to add to the application? All right. No, sir. Okay. All right, then at this time we'll conduct a public hearing. Anyone present wishing to speak for or against this application, if you would please come forward. And seeing none, we'll declare the public hearing closed. Open the floor for further discussion or motion.
No further question.
Go ahead.
You got a question?
No. I was going to do the same thing you were going to do.
Okay. No further questions. I'll make a motion to approve the special use permit with the conditions recommended and set by the staff.
I'll second.
Have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Not all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, Mr. Hightower, that application has been approved. All right, next we'll consider application Z15080 by Ms. Bridget Brown, requesting a special use permit to allow a group daycare home. And this is for property located in a single-family residential RS-15 district located at 1819 Haynes Drive. All right, Mr. Anthony, if you could review that one for us, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The applicant wishes to obtain a special use permit to operate a group daycare home in her house, which is located at 1819 Haynes Drive. The subject property is zoned RS-15. Based on several calls I've received and emails I've received, it appears that there may be some incorrect information about the applicant's request floating around. And so for the benefit of those in attendance and who may be watching, I do want to make clear that the applicant is not seeking a rezoning. What she is seeking is a special use permit. If the board grants the special use permit, the property would still be zoned RS-15. Chart 1 of the zoning ordinance lists group daycare home as a use allowed by special use permit in the RS-15 zone. The zoning ordinance defines a group daycare home as a place providing or designed to provide care for more than 7 but less than 13 children for less than 24 hours a day, which is licensed by the Tennessee Department of Human Services. The applicant wishes to provide care for up to 12 children in her home across 2 shifts. The first shift would run from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. and include care for 8 children. The second shift would run from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. and include care for 4 children. The hours and the number of children do meet the definition of group daycare home, which is set forth in the zoning ordinance. The zoning ordinance lists 5 specific standards for group daycare homes, and I want to cover each of those. The first standard relates to on-site, off-street parking to load and unload passengers. The applicant has constructed a circular drive in front of her home for the purpose of loading and unloading. Based on a recent visit to the site, I would estimate that there's sufficient space for probably 4 or 5 vehicles in the circular drive. She also has a long driveway that can accommodate probably 6 vehicles as well. The second standard relates to safe entry and exit of vehicles to and from the site without backing onto any street or sidewalk. There's no sidewalk in front of the applicant's house. And the circular drive, if used properly, could prevent vehicles from backing onto the roadway. The third standard is a requirement that the Tennessee Department of Human Services provide a statement indicating that the proposed daycare home can comply with state requirements. Staff requests that you make any approval for a special use permit, if you were to approve it, conditional on the applicant providing that statement to the city. The fourth standard relates to screening between a property with a daycare home and any surrounding residential property, including planned residential developments. The subject property does not lie adjacent to any planned residential developments. However, it is surrounded by other, as you can see on the zoning map, plenty of other RS-15 properties. It would be up to the board, if the special use permit is approved, to determine whether any screening would be necessary between the applicant's home and the surrounding properties. The fifth standard requires that off-street parking be located on-site. The on-site parking shown on the applicant's sketch appears to meet the parking requirements for group daycare homes. The applicant has indicated that any overflow parking could be directed to Colfax Drive, which lies on the other side of Haynes Drive from the applicant's home. Staff would strongly recommend against this because Haynes Drive can be quite the busy street, particularly during morning and afternoon rush hours, and trying to cross Haynes on foot with a child during these times would certainly not be ideal. Again, though, it appears that the applicant's driveway and circular drive can meet the minimum parking standards. If the board approves the special use permit, staff recommends the following condition. The applicant shall provide a copy of the required statement from the Tennessee Department of Human Services to the City of Murfreesboro. The DHS statement shall conform to the requirements listed in Section 9D2BB3 of the zoning ordinance. Finally, we have provided you with copies of emails and letters that have been sent to us by neighboring residents. Most of the emails and letters that we've received are focused largely on traffic concerns and a desire to maintain the residential character of the neighborhood. There are a couple of others that came in just shortly before the meeting. We'll pass those around. I don't have copies, unfortunately. And, Mr. Chairman, I do, before concluding my remarks, I want to point out that over the last couple of weeks, we have received some email correspondence from folks who did not want to attach their names onto their correspondence. We have opted not to provide that for a couple of reasons. First of all, we have some concerns with regard to the Tennessee Open Records Act and how passing along anonymous information relates to that. Secondly, we believe that the applicant should have the ability to listen to any discussion related to her project and to respond in kind. With that being said, we're here to answer any questions, and the applicant is here as well.
Add to your application.
Yes. I know that some of the respondents had mentioned about the comings and goings of me having children in my home. I specifically kind of geared towards individuals that work, not doctors, nurses, officers, because I'm a retired state trooper myself, and I know how hard it is for individuals to get child care when you're working shift work. So that's the reason why I'm targeting 2 different shifts to help the individuals that I'm already caring for their child. Most of the people that already come to my house do not come at the same time. So there would not be a cluster of cars parked in front. I have a sign-in and sign-out sheet if you want to see from the individuals that's already coming. It's less than 8 because I can do that right now. But usually it's 6, 8, 11, 9:30 because these are different shift works. Individuals that work different shifts. Individuals that work shift work. So it's not like everyone's going to be coming at 6 o'clock to drop off their children or picking up at 6 o'clock to pick up their children. One might come at 8 and pick up at 4. Another one might come at 6 and pick up at 3. So it's not, I just want everyone to know it's not going to be a cluster of people lined up to get in the home. That's it.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Brown. Any questions for Ms. Brown? So you're operating there now?
I have several children that I watch right now, yes.
How long have you been doing that?
I've been doing for about close to a year.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm just curious how the issue came up.
Well, because the parents that the children I care for now, they referred me to some of their coworkers that are obviously work shift work, and they've asked me if I can watch their children. Well, legally, I can't watch more than 7 right now, and I have that many now. So I've told them they have to wait and see the outcome of this, if I can care for their children. But right now, I have 7.
Thank you, ma'am. Okay. All right, this time we're going to conduct a public hearing. Anyone present wishing to speak for or against the application, you're welcome to come forward. I would ask you, when you come forward to the podium, if you would state your name and your address for us, please.
I'll go first. I'm Dewey Patton. I have two properties in this subdivision. I live on 2306 Wiltshire Drive. I've been a resident there for 15 years. I'm probably sure that everybody on this board is familiar with Riverview Park subdivision, and with Haynes Drive in particular. That road is over 2 miles long, and there is no commercial operation, there's no shindig, no funny business, except on Memorial Inn where Rite Aid is, okay? It is residential. I call it 70s comfort, okay? There's, on the issue of traffic, I would just like to say that I am a retired traffic engineer from the state of Tennessee. Haynes Drive is a high access road, driveway road. It's not a thoroughfare per se, but any conflicting turning movements on Haynes just adds to the problems with safety and with traffic capacity, particularly across from Colfax. That is an intersection, by the way. It's a T intersection. My personal experience as a commuter in the mornings is where this house is located, and at Colfax, traffic backs up from Thompson Lane traffic light past Colfax. So you're asking to introduce left turning movements, which is going to further aggravate the problem, regardless of what people say. This is from observation. I also did surveys in the city of Murfreesboro on behalf of TDOT, so I know what I'm talking about. On the other hand, if you're coming westbound on Thompson Lane, off of Thompson Lane on Haynes, and there's any conflicting movements there to include stopping and pulling in or going into Colfax on overflow, that's going to have the possible effect of backing traffic up onto Thompson Lane, which is something that we can't afford to have in terms of public safety and just traffic flow. But my concern really is a property owner, and we're all property owners. This is going to have a potential negative effect on property values. Now, property values, typically, we enjoy excellent increases every year on values. Houses sell very quickly. When they're on the market, there's a high demand. I have neighbors that have sold. One sold the first day of listing for asking price, and the house next to on my south sold within 3 days of right below asking price. So my concern is as a property owner, first and foremost, that this is going to have an impact. We're also changing the characteristic of the neighborhood. We're making this neighborhood now open to kind of commercial type activities. And who's to say, I mean, she's already admitted she's running an operation without your approval. Okay? She's already admitted that. Well, who's going to stop her from going over? Okay? Somebody said something, that's why she's here. So she's already made improvements to the property, cart before the horse. So it leads me to believe that, hey, what can we expect in the future? Are we going to see a commercial type building there? Eventually she's going to put a request in for that and more children, okay? And then it forces the taxpayer and the city to consider a two-way left turn lane, okay, for that particular house. It's a residential neighborhood, RS-15. I have a reasonable expectation as a homeowner, as a property owner, and as a taxpayer that you preserve the integrity of that neighborhood. Okay, I've been there 15 years. I expect to live there for the rest of my life. I'd like to keep it as it is, and I would bring your attention to the issue about potential traffic conflicts, and of course, how are we really going to control this kind of creep with respect to commercial activities in our neighborhood? Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Patton.
Mr. Chairman, I appreciate the opportunity to at least express some opinions, and they're mainly that. I've been a resident at 1714 Haynes Drive, my wife and I. We're luckily going to be celebrating our 50th anniversary next year. We hope to do it at that house.
Ted, tell me your name.
Haynes Drive, pardon?
Your name, sir.
Oh, I'm sorry, Ted Mason.
Thank you, sir.
1714 Haynes Drive. And I'm not a good judge of distance either, and I'm not a traffic expert. I can tell you a couple things that I know as honest truth. Lived there for 30 years. more than 15 years ago, I was really excited when I heard they're going to extend Haynes Drive through to Memorial. I said, oh man, that's great. We can drive down there and we can get to the other side of the city. Well, we all know what happened after that was done. And obviously there was a good reason to do that. But more recently, a year ago, I put a circular drive at our property. And I didn't do it for a business reason. I did it because you cannot get out on Haynes Drive. It is tremendously dangerous. Luckily, we don't have any children anymore. We raised 3 children at the house. But even with that circular drive, which our drive can hold 3 cars, it's difficult to get out. We have people that come in, at least now they can pull out going front, the front of the car out on the drive. Very difficult to get out, even with that circular drive. And I live quite a distance back from Haynes than the property we're talking about. Now, the other thing, and I have to kind of catch myself here to make sure I try to cover everything that needed to be said. The applicant mentioned about parking on the other side of the street. We used to be able to walk in our neighborhood. We used to be able to walk across Haynes Drive. That's difficult to do now. I mean, I've been at those intersections, Colfax and Cabot, and stood there for minutes upon minutes waiting to try to walk across Haynes Drive. So those are all observations that I know to be fact. Most of these observations are all during non-drive time periods. I mean, we're a resident. I try to walk across the street at 2 o'clock, at 8 o'clock at night. My wife and I like to walk and ride bikes. It's difficult to do any time during the day, let alone drive time. The other concern I would have is the previous gentleman mentioned, it's one thing to say, well, people are going to be coming just one at a time. I don't know if there's how you're going to depend on that to happen. But if there are, and maybe you can get 4 cars into that circular drive, I'd kind of question that. I drive by that drive every day. I work in Laverne. And by the way, I always leave early to go to work. And the reason I leave early is I've got to wait for that stoplight. I got to wait. I'm backed up past Colfax. I leave work late at night. My wife will testify that. She hates it. One of the reasons I do is because every time I leave early, I can't get into Haynes Drive. So I really respectfully ask you to consider all those things. I know nothing about daycare. I don't know what the need is. I do know there was a daycare submission, which I know you're probably all aware of that, maybe 20 years ago or so, that was turned down. It wasn't on Haynes Drive. So I think that's all I can think of right now. But I appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Mason.
Mr. Chairman, my name is Tommy Campbell. I live at 1726 Haynes Drive and have lived in that residence since 1976. I think that when I first saw that there was an application for a permit and I inquired, and I learned that the application was for a special use for a group daycare, I had to stop for just a minute and think through that. And simply because of my experience in trying to get in and out of Haynes Drive at any time of the day, but more particularly morning hours and evening hours. For those of you that live in Murfreesboro, if you I'm certain that you probably at some point traveled that area. You've experienced the same thing that I'm referring to. And with that, I have a serious concern about safety matters, especially as it is regards to children. In looking at the city's website and getting some information from the Transportation Department, and I think this information has been shared with you, but just as a matter of record, the average daily traffic count for Haynes Drive, there is a particular station within feet of the applicant's residence, and although the numbers go back a number of years, the numbers that I would share with you, the average daily traffic on Haynes Drive in 2014 was 7,857 vehicles. That did include eastbound and westbound traffic. That number has continued to grow each year. 7,857 in 2014. In 2010, it was 6,570. So in a few short years, that traffic count, that average traffic count, increased over 13 vehicles. The other component to the traffic there, and we saw on the map earlier, the applicant is only 5 houses from the intersection of Thompson Lane and Haynes Drive, but the traffic on Haynes Drive, or excuse me, on Thompson Lane itself has become so unmanageable at times during the day. That could be early morning, it could be late evening. Only in the last week, I've noticed traffic backed up from Haynes Drive all the way to Broad Street. And a lot of that traffic is trying to turn onto Haynes Drive. At 5:15 last night, I noticed it was backed up all the way to Auto Art Body Shop. So there's a tremendous amount of traffic on Thompson Lane that, as we all know, because the state hasn't funded or initiated any kind of project, that traffic's going to continue. Go back to my numbers. The average daily traffic count on Thompson Lane in 2014, using a traffic count station there at the curve near the milk. What is it, Mr. Young? What's the name of the milk place there in the curve, right across where the...
He doesn't talk about other...
I understand. Okay. Nonetheless, close by, close to the river. That particular, in 2014, that count was 22,928 as an average per day, as compared to 21,244 in 2010. So that traffic count continues to grow. And the last point that I would make is that as the state and the city continue to try to manage the traffic on Thompson Lane coming towards Haynes Drive, they're going to have to increase that green light period for those cars to be able to move down Thompson Lane, whether it's northbound or southbound traffic. That then is going to aggravate the situation there at Haynes Drive, where the red light itself for those individuals trying to turn onto Thompson Lane, that traffic will continue to back up further. The last point that I would simply make is I oppose the application. I don't oppose daycare facilities, but I don't believe that in this particular case, having a daycare facility in the middle of a residential area, especially one that is so vulnerable to traffic, is in everyone's interest for safety purposes. So I would ask that you deny the request. Thank you.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Campbell. No, unless there's anyone, I'll tell you what, Ms. Brown, I'll give you another opportunity at the end of all the public comment period to make whatever comments you want, but I want to exhaust the other public comments first.
Jimmy Clymer, reside at 2511 Colfax.
I'm sorry, can you state your last name?
Jimmy Clymer, at 2511 Colfax Drive.
Thank you, sir.
And I could agree with everything that's been said so far with traffic and property values. But one of the problems I have on Colfax is that it is used for an overflow parking lot. And when you're coming down Colfax to make a left or right-hand turn on Haynes, there's a little dog leg right there by a cemetery, and you can't see until you get up on that dog leg. But that time, somebody could be on you, coming the other direction. And it has been used this past summer for a tractor parking lot, an 18-wheeler tractor, and the city took care of that. It was parking over there. So I just don't see that with us being residential that we need a daycare facility and a special use right now. What's to say that we don't come back later and make it a permanent daycare facility? So I'm opposed to it.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Clymer.
I'm Larry Sandlin, 2507 Cabot Court. I'm not going to elaborate a lot on the traffic problem. I think they've already explained that. And I agree with everything they've said here. I've lived there for almost 30 years, and they're right about the traffic problem. But another main concern that I have is that once you start and put up a precedent of special needs, what does that cover? I mean, that could be anything. So we've got one daycare center, which I'm not opposed to at all, and that's fine. But what's next? And this is a residential area, and we'd like to keep it that way. How would you like me to come to your house and open Ma and Pa's restaurant right next to you in your neighborhood? So it's residential. We want to keep it that way. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you, sir.
Good afternoon. My name is Dennis France. I live at 2418 Colfax Drive. I lived there about 18 or 19 years. And I'm not going to speak on speculation. Now, what I want to do is tell you a couple of facts. I know you've heard the traffic issues, and those are very real. My wife and I have had instances where we have come out of Colfax making a left or right turn onto Haynes. There was a car that used to park there. I believe they reside at the residence, to tell you the truth. And sometimes in the evening when it's dark, you cannot see, if you're turning into Colfax, you cannot see this car. It's parked off to the side, and I know that things have been taken care of, especially since the sign's gone up. I've noticed that they don't park there any longer. I wish that you would consider and take this into consideration. I, too, live there. I just recently retired from the military. My wife and I do want to continue to reside not only in Murfreesboro, but on Colfax Drive. And we do like the quietness there, and we've enjoyed the neighborhood, and we'll appreciate your time. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
I don't necessarily need to come to the podium.
Well, yeah, actually, if you have any other comments, we do need you to come to the podium. But let me make sure there's no one else here that wants to speak first, okay?
My name is Mark Eisenberg. I live at 2508 Colfax, and I want to say that I confirm everything that has been said by these individuals. Again, I have gone out of my house, headed toward Haynes, and as Jimmy Clymer said just a minute ago, there's a little curve in the street. Cars have been parked there that have come across the street from this property. Tractor trailer, Dodge Charger, other vehicles. And I had just about clipped one of those vehicles on one occasion because of the parking coming across the street. So I feel it is a danger, especially on Colfax. And the traffic is really congested on Haynes, and I just do not feel, everything considered, that we need a daycare in our residential community. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, sir.
Hi, I'm Beverly Sutherland. I live at 1710 Berkeley, which is one street behind Haynes. You know, we have a very, very nice, we've lived there for 30 years, and we love our neighborhood. Our kids love it. We had a daughter come back from Mississippi and bought a house with about 5 down from us. I could look at her house from our den. You know, we have another daughter who lives in North Carolina who wants to come back and live in our house when we decide to move out. You know, this is a nice, nice neighborhood. And we have too many rental properties right now in the neighborhood. I wish we could stop that, but that's another issue. But I don't want a daycare anywhere taking down our property values or the essence that we have in the neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Anyone else that hasn't spoken yet wants to speak about this?
My name's John Henderson. I live at 1718 Haynes Drive. My wife and I moved to that area in 1999 because we could have a single-story dwelling with no steps, because one day we're going to get aged enough that'll be a problem. Now, there is no homeowners association there, and everybody in that neighborhood at that time was taking wonderful care on their own to make that one of the nicest kept streets in town. We'd like to keep it that way. I can't see any reason to issue this special use permit to disturb the integrity of that community. And I agree with everything that's been said about what it will do to property. I also furnished pictures to Mr. Halliburton that I took last Thursday afternoon of the traffic back 10 and 15 cars past 18 whatever there. This is no place to interrupt the integrity of our neighborhood, and I ask you sincerely to deny this request.
Thank you, Mr. Anderson.
By the way, sir, would everybody here that opposes this please stand?
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Please, and also, please understand, well, we appreciate that. We can't consider it based on votes. You've got to make your comments to us. You've got to come forward and tell us why you oppose it. Okay, so appreciate that everyone's standing, but we've got to hear from you too. Yes, sir.
Chairman Rogers, my name is Eddie Smotherman. Live at 707 Woodmont Drive, which isn't as nice a neighborhood as Riverview, but we're proud of it. The reason I'm here speaking before you today is because I understand that you guys have difficult jobs and have to make tough decisions sometimes, and you do it based off information that you're given oftentimes from this podium. We appreciate what you do. More than that, having grown up in Murfreesboro, I understand the importance of Riverview neighborhood. It's always been a well-protected, well-preserved neighborhood. It's always been a neighborhood that has been well-maintained and well-kept. Some 20-odd years ago, a similar request was made as to the one you're hearing today. It was denied. And the reason it was denied, I think, is because it would have affected the integrity of the neighborhood. I think it would be advisable today to make the same decision that was made several years ago. Let's protect the neighborhood and preserve the tranquility and the retirement homes that many of these people enjoy. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Smotherman. All right. Unless there's anyone else that hasn't already spoken. Yes, sir.
John Arnold, 2507 Montclair Avenue. I agree with everything that's been said, a lot more detail than I would have been able to provide, but I can say that quite often we can't enter Haynes Drive from Montclair. My neighbor that lives at the corner of Haynes and Montclair oftentimes has to travel an opposite direction to get on. The traffic is backed up from Thompson Lane all the way to the corner of Montclair, which is 2 blocks. So I definitely oppose this application. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Michael Taylor, live at 1706 Oxford Drive, and everything that's been said I agree with, and I do oppose it.
I'm Rebecca Woosley. I live at 1811 Haynes Drive, and I'm opposed to it because I want our neighborhood to stay residential and no business. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Unless there's anyone else, then we'll go ahead and I'm going to go ahead and give Ms. Brown, or I'm sorry, Ms. Yes, sir. Mr. Mason, yes, sir. If you want to come to the podium, please. We got to catch your comments on the record here.
I'm sorry.
Oh, you're fine.
Never spoken in front of a zoning board before, and I second the motion. You all have difficult jobs. There's no doubt about that. There is one other fact that I don't think has been brought up, and I meant to, and that's I think we're all aware that Haynes Drive came very close to being widened a year or so ago. I don't know where that stands right now. Just like extending it through to Northfield, I hope it never is. But be that as it may, if the city is thinking about widening that street, how can we make any decision where we know it's going to increase the traffic? Doesn't make any difference what time it is. There's going to be more traffic every day on that street. And for that reason, I also respectfully hope that you deny the request. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, sir. Ms. Brown, I'm going to give you the last word, ma'am.
I just want to clear some issues up that I noticed these individuals have. I'm not looking to turn my house into a daycare because I still reside there with my children and my husband. So I'm not looking to do a daycare. I'm just looking to be able to care for 4 more children. Right now, I'm legally able to care for 7 in my home without license or special permit or anything like that. Because of the request is the reason why I put in for the special permit for the 4 individuals that would like me to care for their children. I don't think adding 4 more parents coming and going to my home is going to make that much of a difference in the traffic. As these individuals said, yes, traffic is a bit much on Haynes. But adding 4 more people coming to my home, I don't think it's going to make it that much worse. Also, I have not parked, or nor have any of my parents parked on Colfax. I put that in because I reading the instructions as far as what I need to detail in my letter that was in there, and I just put that as a possibility if ever I need it, which with 12 individuals coming at different times, there's never a need for any of us to park on Colfax. They also mentioned the integrity of the neighborhood. I'm not looking to put up a sign. I'm not looking to advertise on my lawn. I'm not looking to change the neighborhood. I live there. I like the neighborhood. The reason why I moved there is because of the way the neighborhood was. It's quiet. So I'm not looking to draw more attention to the neighborhood by putting up a sign saying, hey, I'm a home care provider, not a daycare, but a home care provider. So if there's no signs and there's no evidence that there is home care in my home, how is that changing the integrity of the neighborhood? I don't understand that. Once again, like I said, as it stands right now, I do have 4, including my 3 grandkids that I do care for, which is legal, just to let them know, it's been done for over a year. I just need to get a special request for the 4 other individuals that would like for me to care for their children. That's it.
All right, thank you. At this time, we're going to go ahead and close the public hearing, and we're going to now discuss this among the board members. I'm sure the board members have some questions, and questions to Mr. Anthony, maybe questions to Ms. Brown, but we're going to talk about it a little bit.
Well, I'll start. I think as we are guided on this board, and we look at when an applicant comes to us to use or wanting a special use permit, one of the things that's put before us, as I read it here, is that the use should not have a substantial or undue adverse effect upon the adjacent property, the character of the neighborhood, which has been talked about many times, and then the traffic conditions. And I would agree with, to a degree, with Mrs. Brown's comment with the fact that, how much more is 4 more families coming in and out of her house daily going to add to the traffic? But I guess my response to that is, why would we want to add any traffic to Haynes Drive? I'm not trying to take a biased opinion here, but I'm just going to state fact. My parents lived at 1618 Haynes Drive from, I lived there for a portion of the time, but say 1980 to somewhere around 2010. And we had to put a circular drive because you couldn't back out. If you backed out, you're taking your life in your own hands. So I'm opposed to this special use permit strictly because of I don't see any reason why we would add to the traffic conditions on Haynes Drive.
Well, I want to ask the question because I'm a little confused. I didn't know that you didn't have to have a permit to have 7 children in a home. I thought at one time it was 4 children you could have in a home without a permit. So is it up to 7 now? Or?
There's some gray area. Children who are related, you can babysit children who are related to you.
Oh, okay.
The definition down from group daycare home is family daycare home, and that is a place providing or designed to provide care for less than 24 hours a day for more than 4, but less than 8 children who are unrelated. I believe that if she's caring for more than 4 unrelated children in the home, then that does need a special use permit. But if it's fewer than that, then it would not. That's my understanding of reading this definition. The related children, that's a different thing, and that's people babysit their relatives. That's definitely one thing. But the unrelated children seems to rise to a different level here. For more than 4, so actually it would be 5 if you were keeping 5 unrelated children, right.
My thoughts are that certainly on this board we see a number of these same type applications of people that want to provide this service in residential neighborhoods, and each one is presented on their own merits, and you see how it can work within the neighborhood. Some work okay and provide a service, and other times it can be a difficult fit, and this is one of those. I just think it's a difficult fit based on the logistics around Haynes Drive and the traffic. So I'm probably not one I'm in favor of.
I tend to agree with. I think that the character of this neighborhood sounds like this could create a substantial effect on the character of the neighborhood. I was curious if Mr. Anthony had any additional information with regard to special use permits in this area. If you have a brief history of other special use permits, I know that the one was mentioned in 88.
Yeah, so a gentleman had inquired about that a week or so ago, and I was able to do some quick research on it. There have been a couple of special use permits, but they were more for accessory apartments within the neighborhood. The only one for childcare was from 1988, and that was for a similar situation of what's being requested today, and that was denied by the board. I could not find anything since that time that has come to the board beyond accessory dwelling units, apartments behind houses. And I think there were maybe 3 of those over the last 20 years or so.
And no additional businesses?
No. That's not to say that we haven't signed some home business permits. That's done administratively, and that would probably take us an eternity to research, but that's a separate matter.
Thank you.
All right. It's all been said, everything that I can say. The traffic is what it is. For me, though, it's about the character of the neighborhood. I grew up on Tomahawk, which runs off of Haynes Drive, and that's when y'all remember. There's people out there that remember this. Certainly, when Haynes Drive stopped right there at Tomahawk, and that's when I lived there. And I'm trying to sit here and think. If you go in any direction from Haynes Drive, you've got to go all the way for non-governmental use, almost all the way to Memorial before you hit any commercial use going that way. You got to go back toward Memorial. If you're going down Haynes Drive, I'm talking about going Thompson Lane to Memorial. There's no commercial use until you get almost to Memorial there at the VA. You go back up Haynes toward Memorial. There's nothing until you get to Memorial and the Stones River Manor there. Going toward Broad Street, it's the dairy, I guess. Somebody mentioned the dairy. That's the first commercial use. This place for more than a mile. That's what makes it really unique, I think, in Murfreesboro. More than a mile, it's surrounded by nothing but residential use, and it takes great, I guess, care and pride in preserving that type of use as peaceful, as non-commercial, and as quiet as possible. As quiet as you can with having 7,000 cars on the road. But there's not another use that I can think of the intensity, Ms. Brown, that you're proposing in this area. It would be far and away more intensely used than any other property. If we granted this, than any other property I can think in that area. It's something that's, in my opinion, I think like the other board members, is just not in any way appropriate as you proposed for this particular area. So,
with that, I'll make a motion that we deny this special use permit application.
I'll second.
All right. Motion and a second. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Ms. Brown, your application has been done. All right. We'll next consider application Z. We may want to give a moment to allow people to leave. All right, to go ahead and take up application Z15081 by Mr. Clyde Roundtree for Huddleston Steel Engineering, representing Trinity Presbyterian Church. He's seeking a special use permit to allow the expansion of the church, and this is for property located in a single-family residential RS-15 district located at 1020 North Rutherford Boulevard. All right, Mr. Anthony.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The applicant wishes to add a 2,736 square foot expansion onto the rear of the existing 8,962 square foot church building located at 1020 North Rutherford Boulevard. Because this property is in the RS-15 district, a special use permit is necessary for the applicant to expand the building. Since the proposed expansion includes education space and a kitchen, and does not include any expansion of the auditorium or sanctuary, no additional parking spaces are necessary. The applicant attests that all of the standards for granting a special use permit will be met. The applicant is in attendance and can answer questions, as can staff. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Anthony. Do we have... Do you have a site plan, maybe we can review, or some photos?
Okay. Let me maybe start with the aerial just to situate everybody. This is the existing church building, over 8,000 square feet, with this very long parking lot. Directly behind the church right now, there's a small playground, or at least there was on the day that I visited. This is the area back here where the expansion will be. So if we go back up to the site plan, and you can see again, this is the existing structure is in white, and then the addition is in gray here.
Got a couple photos. You want to run through those real quick?
Yes, sir. We can definitely do that. This is the front of the church as it currently exists. This is that long driveway that runs beside the church, and so this is a shot from the driveway looking at the rear of the church. Let me zoom in just a little bit there, and that's going to be the area where the expansion is. You can see there's a swing set there now, a small storage building. This is where they would be adding on.
Thank you, Mr. Anthony.
Yes, sir.
Any questions? All right. Mr. Roundtree, anything you'd like to add to the application? All right. Then at this time, we'll conduct a public hearing. Anyone present wishing to speak for or against this application?
Have misunderstood what the church is requesting. I was thinking that they were going to maybe sell that land beside the church for residential houses. Do I misunderstand this? Are they only requesting an additional building behind their existing building?
Yes, ma'am.
Well, that's great news. Thank you.
All right. Anyone else? All right. Then at this time, we'll close the public hearing and open the floor for further discussion or motion.
If there's no discussion, I'll make a motion to approve the application, subject to any staff comments.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. That application has been approved, and our final application is Z15082 by Mr. Wayne Moore for Boy Scout Troop 197. He's requesting a special use permit in order to operate an outdoor sales of Christmas trees for property located in a commercial highway district located at 1807 Memorial Boulevard. Mr. Anthony.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As you mentioned, for our final case of the day, Wayne Moore from Boy Scout Troop 187 is requesting a special use permit to operate a temporary Christmas tree sales lot at 1807 Memorial Boulevard. This is the Haynes hardware lot, which is located near the intersection of Memorial and MTCS Road. The applicant has operated a Christmas tree sales lot at this location in previous years and wishes to operate there again this year. The sales lot would be placed along the southern side of the Haynes Hardware Building and would include 2 10-by-10 tents, each of which would be taken down at the end of each sales day. The applicant would like to operate the sales lot every day beginning on November 21st and ending December 21st. Hours of operation would be from 5:30 p.m. to 9 p.m. each Monday through Friday, from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. on Saturdays and the Friday after Thanksgiving, and 1 p.m. to 9 p.m. on Sundays. If the board approves this application, staff recommends the following 2 conditions. First, the site shall pass an electrical safety inspection prior to opening for business. The applicant shall purchase an electrical permit from the Building and Codes Department in order to obtain this inspection. And the second condition, all temporary structures shall meet the minimum building setback requirements for the CH zoning district. The applicant is in attendance and can answer any questions. I can go through the pictures if you would like. I'm completely tongue-tied at the end of this very long meeting. So,
good. Any questions for Mr. Anthony? All right. Mr. Moore, anything you'd like to add to the application? No. All right. This time we'll conduct a public hearing. Anyone present wishing to speak for or against this application? Again, literally seeing none, we'll declare the public hearing closed and open the floor for further discussion or motion.
No further questions. I'll make a motion to approve with the conditions set by the staff.
I'll second.
Motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that concludes our applications. Any staff reports or other business? Thank you, Mr. Anthony. Thank you, Mr. Rucker. Appreciate you being here as well. Been quiet over there. Job well done. All right, then we're adjourned.